it's one that made me laugh initially. What is the most out of character thing you have ever done? That's a question for today. As much or as little as you feel like sharing, of course. There is no conditional aspect to this question. In my case, if I have to, what is the most out of character thing you have ever done? Was probably trying to learn how to dance, because I have zero rhythm and zero like musical ear. So it's really like I have no capacity to follow a rhythm. So for me, it was like really pushing out of myself, out of my comfort zone to learn how to dance back in the day. So that, I think that's one. How about you, Livy?
Oh, that's a hard one. The first thing that came to my mind is, well, I was an actress, so I did a lot of literally out of character things, and I think the most challenging one was, I did just one feature film in my life, and for this film, I was a prostitute, and we had a lab experience in the side of the road of a countryside city in Brazil, and I was interacting with the actual sex workers there as if I was also one. So that was a very out of character, challenging experience. And I'll pass to LBS.
I'm not sure that I have a specific like instance or story, but I will share that I have 3 personalities. I have multiple personalities, and so we do a lot of work to like make sure that we're kind of always in character. Because it can be like really disorienting because all 3 of us are like very different. And so this personality that's talking to everybody right now is I'm the one who like keeps everything coherent for everybody else. I'm not sure who is gone and who hasn't, so I'm going to pass it back to Eduardo.
Thank you, LBS. How about you, Durgaras?
I don't know what we're talking about.
The question
Zero.
is, what is the most out of character thing you have ever done? I can pass it on in the meantime. You can think of something.
Yeah. Okay.
Gideon,
Thanks.
how about you?
Well, I'm so bad at thinking of these things, but the thing that popped to mind was in my last organization, we had a talent show, and it was kind of sprung on me last minute. So like I was like, I don't know what to do, and so for some reason I sang a song in the voice of Popeye in Chinese, and it was weird. It was definitely weird, and it was definitely out of character. I will pass to Bear 100.
You're
You are
muted.
muted.
Hello? I actually don't know. I'm really, really, really stubborn. And mostly when it comes to being in line with who I think I am. So it's hard for me to remember an instance when I was doing something out of character. I don't know. Maybe telling someone they're right when they are not right, but I know I'm right, but I don't want to argue anymore. But apart from that, I just try to stay true to myself, like 100%. And I'm not good at acting. I have never done acting or something like that, so I haven't had the possibility to hone that skill. And I'll pass it on. I think it's all of us, right?
No, Durgaras.
Okay, Durga, then.
Yeah, you guys actually reminded me of one time when I took a like a, I don't know, an intro to acting course, but the only thing that I could do, because I was still really young, I was in my 20s, and I just randomly took this thing for some reason. There was only 2 people there, but I had so much social anxiety that I complete autistic breakdown. Of course, I didn't know I had autism at the time, and all I did was basically sit in a lump and cry in front of 2 people. And so like it was totally, it was the thing I was trying to stretch myself with, and I was kind of proud of the fact that I could be that vulnerable in front of people. um, and I always felt like I would probably be good at this if I could invest myself in it and get comfortable with the pedagogy of it, but I just yeah, I have a hard time with that. So the safety thing is a really big deal for me. And so yeah, I think that might be the most random sort of out of character thing I ever did. Although I will say that I was like a dance fanatic when I was at the end of high school. It was completely out of character too, and I was like a break dancer and did all the stuff. And it was like I had an alternate personality somehow that that just sort of manifested in me. So I think I was thinking that in my 20s I could maybe recapture the thing from this alternate personality that I had. I don't even think people in high school knew that it was the same person. I was just so different, but I was really good. I mean, they were chanting my name and stuff at a certain point, but yeah, I felt like I think I was like, maybe I could just stretch into that thing in the sort of acting vein at some point, like I did with dance, but I couldn't sustain it. So I kind of wish at some point that maybe I could have been a musician or that. But anyway, that was my kind of a long explanation of my story. Thanks.
Thank you, Durgaras. And I know that you don't want to talk a lot, Manu, but do you feel like sharing, or you prefer to stay silent?
No, yeah, I actually have a story about this. I was in Austin. I was during my college years, probably about 7 years ago, and it was Halloween night. And I was out with some friends. I was driving, and so I was probably parking downtown, about to get into the bars. And as I was probably parking, I mean, I gotta confess, I was a little bit tipsy, and there were some girls that were already parked like on the other side of the street. And as I was probably parking, I was just sort of like slightly bumping into the car, and that was like my that was how I knew that it was time to go the other way. And then I was bumping into the car, and then that's how and so they were laughing at how bad I was doing it, although I was doing it on purpose, right? And I guess I got a little bit cocky because I was with my friends. So I exited the car and they were laughing. And I just told them off in the most tailored insult I have ever said. And it was, I'm not even gonna, but it was so bad that I remember feeling like it was so out of character. Like, I don't know what happened to me. But when I came back to my car being completely crashed. Like, they drove into the side of my car, into the door, the driver door, and they completely crashed it, like totaled that door. And so it was like instant karma in a way. So I guess I'm not sure I got what I deserved, but I did get some vengeance for it. So perhaps my due was settled. So that was the most out of character thing that has ever happened to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Manu.
Yeah.
So that was a nice session of openness. So shall we start? Today, the first item on the agenda, it's the usual weekly update on the document that we are working with Kirin. Kieran, would you like to take it on?
Sure. Yeah, I'll share screen. Let's see. Wait, that's not it. Hold on. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay. 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 So, the thing that Edu and I were picking up on last week, we were actually focusing on a few things, but the two that I want to highlight today are the roles that pour out of some of the work that we've been doing as a group here, and then the kind of some next steps on the education and kind of quizzing / testing. So on the roles part, this actually came out of some discussions that we were having last week with Benz and Livia and Yanisi and Edu and me, and there was one other person who was there, just basically a brand new person. And poor Benz was kind of trying to make sense of all of these new names and things like that, because he is basically right now tasked with basically kind of like ecosystem tracking, or like how do we keep track of engagement. His lens that he's using is like, how do we track the engagement of various community members, right? What are the metrics that we're using to track that engagement? And so, and Livia has been doing kind of similar work over in SoftGov, but kind of like from a broader lens. And so one of the things that we realized was that we were having some issues with just kind of like basic definitions and how those map to Discord. And so this, what you see right here, is kind of a first attempt at starting to define some of these roles and standardize them. This is still pretty rough at this point.
Sorry,
You can see, yeah,
can you zoom it a little bit so people
Yeah.
can
yeah.
get it better? Thank you.
Is that better? Is that more legible? Okay. So the first part of this is no Discord roles that we can really have right now. So it's like you can be a token holder and have no connection with Discord, right? You can be a follower of our various accounts like Twitter, Medium, or YouTube, and still have no connection with our Discord. The Discord roles that we've identified so far are a visitor, which Discord kind of confusingly calls a member. That's when you join a server. We then, once you've been verified as human by the bot, then the role switches to newcomer. That's just this thin layer right here. So at any given time, there's not going to be that many people who are in that state. Once somebody goes through the process of education, orientation, and makes their initial community offering, then they become a member. So that's another role. There's some other ones. This is not exhaustive. This is just suggestive right now. So we're gonna. There's still some work ahead of us to thinking about some of these other roles. Praise giver is probably one. There's this idea. This is a brand new idea, but it's like alert receivers. So we think that it's going to be important to ask people what their preferred method of being of receiving alerts and communications from the TEC. So it might be the newsletter that Manu and crew are working on. It might be that they just prefer to have maybe they don't use email that much and they just want DMs in Discord. So there's some role TBD about like how they receive alerts, if and in particular if they want alerts coming from Discord. There's the DJ. These are just like, there's probably going to be a lot more of these, but if you think of these are more like community-wide roles, right? They're not specific to a working group. And so in this next group here, most of the people who are in the working groups are contributors, and they're eligible to receive compensation for their contributions. That probably goes. There's some questions about being a contributor who's not affiliated with a working group and how that works. I don't think we should eliminate that possibility, though. I don't think that needs to be a little bit more blurry. But for now, contributor is one role. A working group member, so that you conceivably could have a role when you have officially joined a working group. A graviton would be somebody who's been through gravity training. Steward, yep, that's a steward. Kanban, so these are some of the other roles that we'll probably need to add to this as we start thinking of it a little bit more. But I'm going to stop here and take some questions and feedback.
I've got a quick one that's just like yes or no. Is there a process yet in the TEC for like assigning these roles when the time comes, or are these actual Discord roles, or are they just something that we like all agree on exist?
So yeah, no, there is no way to assign roles. Right now it's manually, so far, and that's actually one of the reasons why I invited Vibe today to talk about the Discord bot for roles, similar of the ones that I think LBS we talked in the past regarding just picking. Each individual will pick manually the role they feel comfortable or an area of interest they feel comfortable with. So yeah. So the question is, the answer, sorry, it's no so far.
Yeah, cool. It sounds like you're on it though.
Yeah, so there are some roles that are automatically added, like new member and the verified role. Talking about automating role assignment, there's a couple of approaches we can take, and it really depends on like what our needs are. So we need to divide the roles up into blocks. So for example, one block would be roles that we want people to self-assign to themselves. So for example, these can be for example, their pronoun roles, or this can be their preferred notification role, things like that. Those are personal preferences, and maybe we can have opt-in for specific notifications, like working group centric notifications or something of the sort. And then we have the roles that are not that don't function like it. So those are the roles that are assigned based on some criteria, and in that we have two choices. What is that? Someone goes down and manually assigns them, or the second is that we set some programmable criteria for it. So, for example, if you've been part of the TEC for more than 6 months and you have a considerable amount of praise, you have X amount of praise, average X amount of praise over that time period, then you get something like a contributor role or something of the sort. So yeah, we'd have to like divide them into groups, and what preference we have. And if we have some form of like tier system where there's like uh, uh, roles that stack on top of each other, like level 1, level 2, or something of the sort, that's we can also have that. It just depends on the criteria.
Thanks, by the way. That's super helpful, and LBS too. You prompted that, so thank you. That's great. Yeah, we'll. It could be that. Yeah, I mean, Bye, at some point, I think we want to come back and have a session with you. Maybe Edu. I don't know if we can bring Bye into it to kind of just like do a pragmatic check on like what's actually feasible with some of this stuff.
Yeah, we actually talked today about it to see availability to do this, and there are a bunch of things we talk about by Gideon and I, that we don't know if they are feasible to do. But so there are like, just to provide context to everyone, there is a bunch of work streams that are interested on the roles at the moment. There is a work stream that we are taking regarding this journey for the user in the TEC. That is this document that Gideon is sharing. And there is the other work stream that could be also interesting, which is metrics and data that also Benz is taking on. And the idea is that how we can have metrics linked to roles in a way, but also on the user journey, how we can become a better community by having the right roles assigned to people, and how the guides can follow up those roles, and how someone can track or help supporting someone in the working group. Because if someone has a tag or the role, or rather than roles, we talk about, because we didn't like the structure of power of the role stuff. So we changed it to area of interest, and you basically pick an area of interest that has no label, has no power dynamic, no nothing. So area of interest, if you pick up area of interest, is softgov, and then what is prompted to you, for example. No, we talk about, if you pick the area of interest softgov, then you will be labeled in a certain way, and then maybe Levy can, or someone in softgov can reach out to that person saying that they have changed a role or whatever. Like, there is this experimentation process that we need to try to figure out which are the boundaries and which are the limitations that we may have due to technology. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and this is something that's been on the planning process that was in the the onboarding bot, and I think talked a little bit about this with Tam, about having a second layer to that entire system that's just about tracking user states as they progress inside the server, and that it really depends on how much data do we want to track and how we want to track that data. Once we say, for example, there's some agreement in the community that we want some metrics for qualifying some person as interested in a field. So, for example, for the thing that you just mentioned, that we want people to select which fields are their preference. So that's straightforward. We can have a self-assigning role channel inside the Discord server where they can go and react to a message or click a button in the channel and get that role assigned to themselves. Uh, yeah, and then we'd have to like follow some form of consistency with whenever we're mentioning we're making announcements, or we want some kind of action from certain kinds of people. So for example, in the reward system working group, whenever we're doing a quantification period, there's a mention that goes out to quantifiers, that role. So we'll have to do that for every announcement for stewards, or every announcement for people that are interested in softgov. I'm also unsure about what it means to be a member of a working group. Does that mean, are you like a paid contributor, or are you an active contributor of that working group? Because there's the power dynamic, or say the relational dynamic between TC and the working groups, is still something that's somewhat unclear. Maybe it will get clear over the edges, and it depends on the working groups. For example, some might be aiming to become a DAO, so they have some looser structure. Like there's some other working group specific onboarding that you need to give. Okay, so yeah, it really depends, but I would love to talk more about it. Uh,
And I also wonder about people like myself who fall through the cracks, right? So I'm around all the time. I'm a bit more of like a Diogenes figure here instead of much more of an active contributor. So much in places where I do contribute is mostly gravity and very high level, sort of things. So I do wonder, about that sort of thing too. Do you know what I mean? Because clearly people in this community have valued my contributions over time, and yet, somehow there's not a specific role, that I would necessarily fall into for that.
Yeah, I believe that there is one role that you can probably fall into. I think there's a role for matter experts. I think we could maybe make more niches out of that, like explain more. So, for example, you've been doing a lot of work inside Gravity, and that's your forte, that you're an expert
Yeah.
in giving speeches. So, I am not sure how we do that with Discord roles, and that's mostly because the number of role slots we have
Right.
are limited, and the amount of things that people can do are very varied. So one thing we can look into is that there's a thing that Meta came as or had. I am not sure. It's the skills. It's a skill bot, so it like maps your interests and maps your their specific areas that you are experts at. And we could maybe I could try and set up that application for TC or build one from scratch. I think that was one of the ideas that came in the bot sessions that we're doing at TEC Labs. So that could be something interesting because I don't feel like that's something that we can put inside the role system because
Well,
it's too much data.
and it's what I'm pointing to here is that um, see, like you're pointing out a popular conception of my role here, right? But it's at the same time, if you talk to Sebnem, she said, well, 80% of what's in the Omega Group was inspired by what you're talking about. So how does that get quantified? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you talk about that? Do you know what I mean? I'm not using my words, and I'm not saying that I'm all of that. I'm just simply saying, based on what someone said, the reason why that group is there to some degree is to explore the sort of these bigger issues that I've kind of brought up and and tried to reinforce over time. So how does that work? So is it down to popular perception that most of what I'm involved in is gravity? Because the Omega Group is just not a very big or popular group. So gravity is, and so this is what it would be nice to have actual data about that rather than to fall down to people's public perception.
Yeah, that really makes sense, and I think maybe some form of working group documentation that is like summarized into the newsletter. I don't know, to the extent where it makes people like more visible. Uh, but I think like praise is also something that can have similar effect. Like when people are quantifying praise, if we are like giving more specific praise, that's highlights the uh, highlights what we are praising the people for. I think that would also maybe help out with this problem. I'm really unsure how we track this inside roles. We could try and come up with more more buckets and see how we uh, s- uh, s- specify different people. But yeah, it is a complex problem because a lot of people have a lot of tags on them. We can't just put one label on everybody. There's going to be 50 different labels we can put on every person at the same time. So yeah, it would be a slightly complex problem.
Yeah, I mean, here the task is to create a role sense making. At the end, right now in our Discord roles, there is around 20 to 30 roles that makes sometimes no sense. You have three different for gravity, for example, and then it's like it's nice to have a role, but what is the purpose of that? So the idea is that the roles we can sort of redo them a little bit just for them to make sense and to give them either visibility or it has a purpose on the metrics or it has a purpose on the journey, like it will get you somewhere or it will help you or whatever. So it happens a lot of onboarding, like I'm talking to someone until 15 minutes later they actually say which is the area of interest or where they wanna, and it will help, for example, for us a lot to know like that person picked the area of interest right from the beginning, so I already know what he's or she or they are focusing on, so it's easier. And it happens with the rest of stuff, it gives you context, and I feel the roles are not a labeling tool, it's a contextual tool. It helps you to contextualize the user. It doesn't help you to label the user in the sense, oh, that person is only on that thing or that person. No, it's only to provide context. So yeah, I just want to note that.
But on roles, I keep coming back to this point. I don't know how we could integrate that. I think is a little bit of work, but I do think the token engineering flower is already delineation of roles that we would like to have in the community and that we already have in the community. So maybe bringing more awareness to them, and we could have tags on Discord for them. We could group contributions that go to each one of the paddles, and have people that could be like reached out for all those different topics.
I agree. LBS, go ahead.
I think I'm just gonna do like a little meta thought. It sounds like we're really trying to identify which categories of roles should exist, because then it's kind of easier to like fill them out more granularly. So it seems like maybe this group is kind of struggling with like, where is the scope of these categories? And sometimes when I'm struggling to like figure out what it is I'm trying to do at like this smaller level, it helps to kind of like step back a little bit and go like, okay, we could make roles for anything and everything. So what are like the most important things that we like need to accomplish? It might be that like newcomers can flag like a certain type of interest, or it might be that like we know who is in what working groups, or it might be we know like how close or far away you are from the community. But just like whatever those things end up being, it might be a little bit easier to like step back and say what are the major categories that just like we absolutely need to be able to do the things that we're trying to do, and then like get granular with it. Use it if it's helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like on my mind, which is sometimes not explaining itself correctly, but on my mind, it worked that the only roles that we will have are the ones that Gideon have here, like newcomer, member, and contributor. And then after you become a member of the community, then you will have only area of interest attached to you. So gravity will be an area of interest, for example, or conflict resolution or any other synonym we'll find will be an area of interest. Community building will be an area of interest. Decision making will be an area of interest. So you will have these areas of interest rather than a role assigned to you, And gravitons will probably be a specific one of the very few maybe roles that we will have. Hatcher will be one that we will keep just for the sake of it. But the role I really like this dynamic of changing this idea of roles to just area of interest. So we will just be a bunch of members with different areas of interests, and that's it. On my mind, at least.
That sounds great.
I think that the thing is, there may be roles that are important to the organization, but not important from a Discord perspective. So what do I mean by that? So like in Discord, like it's very useful to have roles to be able to shout out to people and not go to everybody. Targeted communications, right? Things that with like permission to certain parts of that was another over this, but it's like from a Discord perspective, what does this even matter? And then like the problem you mentioned that there are limits on the number of Discord roles. Do you know what that limit is?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's somewhere between 150 to 250. I'm not exactly sure on the number. Let me just check.
Okay, and we can follow up with you on. We'll just follow up with you separately on that. But if it's 100 to 250 different roles, then that's I think we should be. Edu, should we go to the next question? Okay. So the next thing, and is even into workflows, the workflow turns out it's probably going to be something that's very, very important to TE. So what we're talking about right now is a very small subset. What I'm going to do is just walk here is when somebody, so this is kind of education as part of the onboarding of a new member, right? And so philosophy on this, do we want to be super serious about this? Do we want to make it more fun? Is this like you get one wrong answer and you're out? Or is this like you get a wrong answer and you're like, hey, try again? So what I'm about to explain is kind of a multi-step process. So for onboarding people. So when somebody comes in, when a newcomer comes into the server, one of the things that they
Sorry,
will
Julian.
be. Yep.
Can you zoom a little bit more? Thank you.
Zoom in. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So.
Really? Yeah.
Is that legible? It's hard to see because I'm looking at.
It does. You can do the thing you're talking about.
Do that. Okay. Is that better?
There you
So when someone comes to the server, they get learn more how to get involved and actually get involved. Click on the Learn More about the TEC. One of the things that we're looking at right now is they can kind of and read more about our values, mission, and the vision. Oops. But what we're talking about right now is maybe doing something and the idea would be that you and then from there, there would be kind of two branches that you can go off in, or you can just stop right there. So one is down the road that we might have like the option to do a more serious test that's like not just a fun quiz, but it's like, it could still be fun, could still be, there's lots of ways of doing this, but this would be like, hey, if you really want to prove to the community that you've done your homework and you really do understand the TEC, then this is more like a test. And at the end of that test, you might get a POAP, right? A proof of attendance or proof of competence for having taken that. And this would be, maybe something over time that as people spend more time learning the culture, learning governance, learning all of these different aspects of the community, they can prove their mastery over time on their own pace, at their own pace. This is another pathway here. So that's like a self-service testing thing but then this is kind of a more fun aspect that's kind of like more in line with the fun kind of feel of the quiz is that you every couple weeks can participate in a community sponsored quiz, right? Like a trivia quiz, trivia party. And at the end of it, there may be TEC tokens that are awarded and POAPs that are awarded for like the people who do, like the excel in that. Okay, I'm going to pause, but let me just add one quick thing and I'll come back to this in a sec, but I just want to pause because I don't want to over. This is what happens as kind of a branching. This is kind of a similar type of test that might happen after, like, let's say you do this test this quiz on your first day or first couple days. After you've been oriented, you might then be prompted with this. This is the thing that we're thinking about right now, which is this newcomer self-interest, like your interest self-assessment. What kinds of things are you interested in? And there's like a branch that goes off of this, but I'm going to pause now and not go into that right now. Let's get some feedback and input from folks.
So the typical countdown: 5, 4, 3.
I'd
Go
like
ahead.
to just mention something. Actually, in one of the sessions for TEC labs, we're planning on making a quiz bot. So if you could get me some template text for this, just for now, maybe just 5 small sets of questions. We can maybe build this next week. And this won't be the application going on there, but it would be interesting to have some other community members making it rather than just me. So that'd be interesting.
Yeah. So regarding the Testbot, there was many ideas to this. I think one of them was the idea of you have a question, then you pick 3 options, one of the 3 options, and then if you failed, you still pass to the next question, but you will get prompted with a link to where is the source to the right answer, and it will happen to all of the questions. And maybe, for example, if someone at the end of that quiz got the 5 right, then they get praise automatically, like, praise this person for finishing successfully the quiz or something along those lines. Or not, for also finishing, doesn't matter if it's correctly or wrong. But the idea is to, go ahead. Sorry.
That's possible. We'll have to have a little chat with reward system. There might be some there might be some resistance to automatic praise that's done by bots, and that's mostly because if something goes wrong, there can be like 500 different praises that go ahead. But I'll maybe chat with Christopher and Matt about it, and maybe they have some good ideas about how we can streamline this a little bit. Yeah, but for now, we can get maybe the quiz working and then focus on the praise.
That's awesome. I love when coincidence like that happens. So that's great, and we'll definitely follow up. And I guess one general question is if there are people who are interested in this particular aspect, like the quizzing education thing, like maybe just flag yourself in the Communitas channel as like people who are interested in digging into this, and we can maybe form some type of group or something. I don't know, Edu, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that, we can start. The idea is that we have reached this point where we start creating action items for these processes, because we need to start testing it out from one way or another one. So if anyone feels that they want to jump into this, please do so. The second thing I want to clarify regarding the trivia, the trivia quiz, the idea is that we will have certain rhythm across the TEC, and then the small version of the quiz will be the one at the beginning. We could have even a channel for the bigger quiz, at the mid-level quiz that Gideon mentioned, and then there will be the trivia game, which is something that happens in one hive. So we are thinking of putting a proposal up for advice process regarding this on the forum this week or the next one, regarding having a bi-weekly or a monthly trivia on the TEC that will be very specific, like what does the opening price parameter means or whatever, I don't know. So we can have people learn about the TEC in a way, because before there was only the debates options to learn about our own things. So the idea is that people can learn, and then people who already know about these things can get re-engaged into the community, but also to foster the social layer that is non-existent at the moment, which is one of the goals of this, with the educational tone that it comes with. So yeah, just to provide that context. Does anyone else wants to comment something regarding this quiz idea? 5, 4.
Yeah. So
Go ahead, Dubres.
I'm just wondering. So I get that you guys are trying to do the lightweight thing. I'm just looking at my my general idea here. It seems to me that part of what we're doing here is this step 1 thing. What the culture is educating is what it becomes, and so what I'm wondering is that are we thinking about like all of educating people on the sort of cultural portion of this, or is this, maybe we can break up the questions into like cultural related questions, like, or high level questions like we deal with omega and gravity, or, you know, so basically what I see is the continuation right now of our, DAO into actually becoming a DAO, which is to how do you when you onboard a person, you have to understand that they come from this sort of step one stuff, and how do you move them through the process to not only let them choose their own sort of way, but also let them know that we have to go through this sort of middle process in order to get to the, you know, actual DAO portion. And then, of course, from my perspective, it goes beyond that too. But all of this is educational in nature, according to me. So I do wonder if there's any way to make use of a graphic like this, or contextualize the so that it can contextualize the work we're trying to do. And obviously, I like to make those graphics better and include more things that are relevant. And those are just a subset of things that could be in them. But anyway, that was just a question.
So that's a great. Let's use that as a way to springboard into this next section, because basically,
Okay.
I think what we're proposing here is that there's these kind of like initial. Think of these as like conversations, in a way. It's like, the person, the newcomer, kind of like dives in, does a little bit of like digging around. We ask some questions in an automated way to begin with, and then they answer through these quizzes. And over time, what starts to happen is there's kind of like two streams that emerge that just allow for kind of an ongoing developmental process. One is like at a community level. So that's like the cultural questions that span the community, the mission related questions that span the community, like community level things. And then the other is this next level that I just want to just touch on because we're running out of time. But this is after you've told us what you're interested in, and this is rough right now, so admittedly rough, but you might then get automatic. Let's say that you said that you're interested in dispute resolution, right? You might then get automatically routed right away, if you've selected dispute resolution, to a very simple and again fun quiz that kind of asks you things about dispute resolution and your understanding of what gravity is, right? And again,
Gravity's
it's
not
not
about
to like.
dispute resolution. Not only.
Okay, sorry. I can pick another one. Transparency. So transparency. You're talking about transparency. You get questions about transparency, and then at the end, it then moves you into it kind of helps you to answer those questions, kind of assesses your interest, assesses your knowledge, and then just plops you into the working group, right? So that you can learn more about the working group. So it's like a doorway. It's like a fun doorway to learn a little bit and kind of find out a little bit about the working group, and then that plops you in to the working group. And then over time, there could be kind of like continued education that are similar, that is basically driven entirely by the working groups, just using some of these same tools. But the working group then kind of picks it up and does kind of similar types of assessments that over time then grow into, they could either take it very seriously and have that be part of the working group's reputation system, which is still something we don't know. We don't know what that is, but the idea is like it could be the working group could either take it not very seriously at all, could not do it at all, or could take it very seriously. These would just be kind of like a starting place for working groups to pick up with this stuff if they wanted to. So I will stop there. Again, these are still pretty rough at this point, but you can see kind of directionally what may be possible in these areas.
I just had one question. Do we really want this to be a Discord only application, or would it be all right if users are or members are routed to a website. And I'm mostly asking this because the workflow can be a lot more neater if we, abstract away and take things to the website. So, for example, you mentioned that people select a role, or people select some preference, and then we give them a quiz automatically, and then they get the quiz. So it can be really straightforward if we give them a link rather than tell them to go into a channel and press a command or something with a sword. The context isn't as consistent. That is something we can think about, but yeah, we can have it on Discord too. It's just about if it can be made convenient and straightforward.
Yeah, this was one of the things that we were wondering about, just also in terms of development resources. Initially, what we were, as a placeholder, what we were thinking is that the more advanced tests rather than these quizzes would be off of Discord. And that's something that, we could, there are lots of different options there, but that the quizzes that maybe it makes sense because it's so tied to like routing people around Discord, that would make more sense as bots. But we should talk about that for sure. It's a great point.
I'm thinking if this could be partnered with the TE Academy also in some points. So for maybe one route being more education about the TEC and how the TEC works like structurally, then we can develop that more, and then maybe partnering with TE Academy to have a more like understand parameters, token engineering, and like some basic dApps should be part of it.
Yeah. So sorry. So yeah, one of the things is that in the mid-level test that Gideon mentioned and the trivia game. I also thought that we could partner with TC Academy, with T Academy, and invite even the token engineers to just put in test their knowledge about token engineering by this trivia session kind of stuff, and they could help us designing some of the questions for the trivia. So something along those lines. Yes, bye.
Yeah, I had a question since we're talking about it. Would we be open to maybe linking this system for the TE and the TC together? If the TC is open, if the TE is open for it, like all of the data is correlated. I think that can be interesting, especially for TE, because and for us, I think as well. Uh, I'm not sure if the communities would be open to that, but like that can be interesting if they, instead of two separate applications that are doing the same thing, because like they're using the same onboarding tool as we are. It's actually it's going to be deployed tomorrow for them. So instead of doing that, can we combine and make one onboarding tool for both the communities, and it's like a divergence of sort. Uh, but the data is correlated mostly because our communities are so interconnected.
Yeah, that would be really cool to have the token engineering server having a similar journey. And maybe we could like have two different type of modules. I don't know, and then one is more specific to the TC, and then the other one is it can be taken in any server and have the same use. I think the price would be, I feel a little resistant on having automated praise, not only for what Vi was talking about of like maybe it would mess up with the data, but also because it feels like praise shouldn't be automated, you know. Maybe a POAP would do the thing, like the person finishes it and gets a POAP, and then this POAP could be integrated in the reward in the reputation system eventually.
Yeah, we can do POAP, and we can also do TC tokens maybe, or anything of the sort. Maybe we can distribute some low uh, level tokens or something like that that are not like worth uh, but yeah, automated pace doesn't make sense. If we get down to use another automated system that is objective, like SourceGrid, we're using SourceGrid right now, but it's still up in the works because of the situations that are going on in SourceGrid right now. So we don't know if we would be using SourceGrid in the future. We could create a SourceGrid plugin for doing the same. Like if you do the quiz, you get some cred. I think that would make a lot more sense than praising someone. Yeah.
Yeah, we could even have, I don't know how easy is that, but a little TEC faucet that like people have access to it once they finish the quiz, and then they can claim a small amount of TEC, like you said.
Right. We are on top of the hour. So thanks so much, everyone who joined for this little workshop session. Just to notice, next Monday, I won't be hosting this call. It will be hosted by Gideon. So yeah, I won't be joining next Monday, but I will be joining the Monday afterwards. So thank you so much, everyone, and looking forward to see you around. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank